Joe, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you today.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you. I feel like, especially, understanding your background a little bit, doing a lot of research, I feel like our paths are like parallel in terms of our mission of trying to help transform people positively. And that's what I want to chat about. You have a lot of rich experience in this. So I thought it could really help folks that are not only scared to start, but maybe don't
Yeah.
know how or overthinking it. So I want to go in a few different avenues if we can. I thought would be a fun starting point is around decision making.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just to say that I look at it just a slightly
Yeah.
differently. Like transformation is definitely a huge part, but like my general thesis is that if people know themselves,
Hmm.
then the transformation is natural. Like it's
Ah,
more about like finding your authenticity than it is about improving yourself.
yeah.
So what I noticed is that when folks are constantly telling themselves they have to improve themselves, what they're also telling themselves is that they're not good enough the way that they are. And that kind of self-abuse doesn't motivate you to do cool shit in the world.
Yeah.
So just to say like the one of the main things that I've noticed, now there's some people who can just like beat themselves up a little bit and then that motivates them to do something. Not that that leads them to happiness or it leads them to joy or any of those things, but maybe it gets shit done. Well, what I notice is that when people really understand themselves, then it's natural for us to be creative and do amazing things in the world.
Yeah.
So that just to
No,
put a
I
fine point
appreciate
on
you
that.
layering that in. That's really helpful. And what's so funny you mentioned that actually, it just made me think of I just saw this video probably a day or two ago, Gary Vaynerchuk posted, and this girl that was at like one of his conferences or one of the talks he did, and she says to him, she's like, "I'm gonna be somebody someday." And he like grabs her and he says, "You are somebody now." And
Right.
it like kind of gave me chills just saying it again, because I think you're right. And I was in this point too. As I try to get started, is like, we don't have the confidence in ourselves of all the things we've done in our lives that led us to where we're at today. Even if it doesn't seem
Yeah.
so grandiose to, the outside world, we've done a lot of stuff that we should bank on to use as confidence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a natural stage where people move where there's a need to understand that you can get things done and that's I would say the building of confidence. But what I notice is that the more that the way I'd say it is the more that I understand myself or the more I see any of my clients really understand themselves, then confidence becomes less and less necessary. Where it's not about like psyching yourself up or telling yourself you could do it. It's more about, oh, this is just what I want to do. And I'm not scared of the consequences. I'm not scared of failure. I'm not scared of like potential misery or potential like feeling like I'm not good enough because I understand myself. And so I'm just going to do the things that are necessary to follow what I want. And I know that whatever happens on the other side of that, I'm okay. And so it's an interesting, even like, and I think there's a need to build confidence at some point in the journey, but even that I think dissipates eventually.
Hmm. I like that point. Are you saying then, would you say it's more, I'll throw out these words, bravery, courage, or maybe it's something else? Would you say if confidence isn't always needed, what else might be needed?
Yeah, I think there's moments where bravery and courage are definitely called for. But at some point, it just turns into choicelessness to a calling. You know, like the way that my life moves right now is that it's like I feel that calling. I know the thing that I'm being asked to do, or I know the thing that's calling me, and I know through enough experience that not doing that is fucking misery.
Yeah.
Like to not do that is misery. It doesn't create the alignment in my life. It doesn't create the right people around me that feed me. It doesn't create and so when I feel that calling, I do it. And so there's almost a choicelessness in it eventually. And there's moments where you have to maybe build the confidence and get to the courage and all those things. It just to say it doesn't end there. It moves um into this place where it's almost like I would say a surrender into it rather than a force of will to get there. It's like oh, this is just what's calling me, and I'm asked to do these things.
How often, or I guess how much do you think I've been noodling on this for a while now around this idea of control. And like, because I was thinking
Yeah.
back at my journey, like if we have control, and again, we can't control every situation, of course, but the things, the decisions, the things we have control over, it seems like it's much easier to go on a kind of our own path versus being pulled always by other people's decisions and kind of being dragged along. Do you see that as well in
Yeah.
terms of what you're talking about surrendering? It's kind of like if you already know yourself or you're at least on that path, you can allow that to guide you a little bit clearer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would. How the way you're phrasing that, the way I'd phrase it is slightly different. Which is, I would say, if you have a victim mentality, right? That is just one level of. That's one way to move. That fear moves through us. So, like, if you have fear, there's usually the human system does fight, or flight, fight, or freeze. That's like the nervous system's response to fear. There's the people who are like often really, really going to get shit done in life, like by almost, I would say, by reflex, not by calling. And they're fighters. They're like, when I'm scared, I'm going to fucking do something
Yeah.
about it. Like, and I'm going to go and change the world and make sure that I don't have to feel this sense of out of controlness. The freezers, when they hit that fear, they are more like they have more of a victim thing, and so the mind starts saying there's other people who actually have control over me, but it's like just not true. They think that it's true. I get that, but like nobody can really tell you what to do. Like, just the fact of the matter is you have choice. The choice might be to not eat. The choice might be to like take a huge risk on salary. The choice might be to risk your marriage by telling your wife what you really want, or your husband by what you really want. But you still have the choice. But the mind, when it goes into freeze, says that somebody else is in control. And if you're in the flight, then what you do is you try to make other people happy to feel to handle the fear. If everybody else is happy, then I don't have to be scared. So
Mm.
you're flying away from yourself into other people. And so to me, all of those are an expression of fear. None of them actually lead to where you deeply want to be. But when you're in that victim place and you don't feel like you have control over your life, that's a heavy place to be. I mean, like I notice that when people have that tendency, and when they move out of that into empowerment, it's just an amazing thing to watch when people I work with move out of other people have control and I'm like subject to other people's whims to, oh wow, I can feel these emotions and take the risk and do the things because I know myself enough to be able to do that.
Mm. How do
Yeah.
you open folks up to let's go we'll go on some tangents here because this is really good. I'm glad we got into this because when you're mentioning that like the flight thing, I'm like, oh yeah, that was me like 10 years ago and prior, like that that makes a hell of a lot of
Right.
sense. But the empowerment piece, like are there, I don't know if it's a question or two to dig deeper, like how do you get folks thinking of where they're at today, wherever that is, to get to the state of empowerment? Like, is there anything that just slowly cracks that egg for them to think differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the ways that I look at what I do is I don't get people anywhere, right? So what I notice is that everybody has the like an oak, like an acorn, it knows how to become an oak tree.
Mhm.
So inside everybody is the acorn that knows how to become themselves. Like we unfortunately get taught a whole bunch of things that like stagnates that, right? So there's nothing in an acorn that doesn't know how to become an oak tree. However, if that acorn is like, doused with chemicals or put in rocks instead of in soil or whatever, then it has a hard time expressing itself. So to me, it's not about helping someone get there. It's recognizing that all that wisdom is in there
Mm.
and that all they need is the right context, and then all that greatness of that oak tree comes out. So that's how and in that perspective alone is an empowerment,
Mm.
right? I know you know how to do this. You don't need me. And so if even like right away, if I'm working with somebody and I think they need me, or I think that I can help them, or I think that I know their answer, I am disempowering them. If I am solving their problems for them, I'm disempowering them. If I don't think they can handle it, like, I'm disempowering them. So it's really more about what I don't do than what I do.
Yeah.
But if you want to, the main thing is the perspective that I hold for them is you're absolutely capable. There's nothing wrong with you. That, like, all these things in your head, that all these stories that you tell yourself, you can't prove that they're true. You're convinced, I get it, but you can't prove that they're true. And so one of the things that I will do I think about transformation in the three brain way, right? Which is, there's the intellectual part of the brain, there's the emotional part of the brain, or the mammalian part of the brain, and then there's a nervous system, like more reptilian part of the brain.
Mhm.
And if you want transformation with alacrity, you have to address all of them. And so in the intellectual side, I really will help them deconstruct the negative self-talk in their head. Not replace it with like, oh, you're great, you're wonderful, you can do this. That has a lifespan. It doesn't work. It except for like short little sprints, right? That's why people are like, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna lose weight, and they're really good for like 2 weeks, and then it all goes away. It's because they're trying to prop this thing up with like, oh, you can do it, rather than just like see through the bullshit that your brain is telling yourself. So that's one. On the emotional level, it's all about allowing yourself to feel the things that you don't allow yourself to feel. Because when you learn to appreciate all these feelings that you call negative, that are actually like great signals, and they tell you a lot of amazing things, and they give you a tremendous amount of freedom. When you learn to like really enjoy those emotional experiences, then you're not scared of the consequences, right? Because no one's scared of being homeless. People are scared of feeling homeless,
Yeah.
right? Like if I told you you were going to be homeless and you were going to be happier than you've ever been, and you're going to feel like satisfied with like tremendous amount of purpose and like a sense of peace and joy that you've never experienced, like homeless, like it's the feeling that we project onto the thing that we're scared of. So and then on the nervous system, it's really about learning to enjoy yourself. It's really about pleasure. And because our body, when it's in enjoyment and gratitude and pleasure, then we're not like looking for the next foot to fall. And when we're not looking for the next foot to fall, that's when like a lot of our energy can't be moving towards creation, because we're constantly we're playing defense.
Mm. Yeah, that's really.
So those are the things that I do that create empowerment generally. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I like that. Go back, if we go back to the intellectual, because you mentioned about, I
Yeah.
think, and we see this a lot with the New Year's resolutions, right? It's,
Yeah.
happening
Right.
right now. Is it more putting systems in place that you're going to continually just work toward and kind of chop away at? Like, I'm trying to think, like, what's the best way for folks, again, that are maybe trying to get started, where they're like, well, my idea was to say I'm going to go to the gym 2 hours a day to get in shape, but maybe that's not the best way. What would they replace that with? What's like a good starting point to replace that with from the intellectual side?
How I'm going to enjoy exercising for 45 minutes a day.
Hmm. So no goals,
That would be,
besides just, hey, I'm going to go there. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's the act of just being there, just putting yourself in that environment, basically.
it's the act of enjoying.
Enjoy. Okay.
Okay. So here's what most people do. I'm going to go work out, and I'm going to do it like X times a day. And then they beat themselves up to get there. And then when they're done, they beat themselves up because they didn't work out enough.
Right.
And then they come home and they're tired. And instead of realizing that their body needs rest, they beat themselves up for not going the next day. Like that. And then they're like, why don't I exercise? Well, it's because you punished yourself in every fucking step of the way. Every single step of the way, you're just punishing yourself. So wow. Imagine that 2 weeks after punishing yourself, beating yourself up, and giving you negative reinforcement for every aspect of going to the gym, you're not going to the gym anymore. Surprise. Like, rather than oh, what do I do to enjoy exercise? How do I like look at every way to enjoy exercises and keep that? I'm going to exercise and I'm going to enjoy it. And then that transform over time. Like if it's just pickleball, then just play pickleball for a while. And then like, okay, now I'm going to go to the gym. How do I enjoy going to the gym? So when you think about enjoyment, part of it is what are the things that I do that are enjoyable? The other part of it is like, how do I enjoy what I'm doing? And so like right now, you and I don't have to change anything. And we can think to ourselves, how do we enjoy this moment? Or for the listener, like, how do you enjoy this moment of listening to this podcast 5% more?
Yeah. Hmm.
And there's something there. We can actually do that as well. So we can enjoy the whatever we're doing in the gym as well and learn to enjoy it even more and more and more.
Yeah.
And then why not do it? I fucking enjoy it. Why would I not do it? Like we do things we enjoy all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you make a damn good point there because it's like, I mean, I think of this, I guess, 'cause I do a lot of CrossFit, and I started this. As I'm rolling off my tongue, I'm chuckling because I'm like, I'm trying to become a runner, and just
Yeah.
because it's something totally outside my comfort zone, I do not like running, but I
Yeah.
am trying to find enjoyment in it, which is interesting that you say that. Of like, how can I? Not that I have to run. I don't need to run a 7-minute mile. I don't know if I'll ever do that. But the fact
Right.
of just going out there and just whether it's a certain small little win, I think for me, it's actually just being out there. Like, wow, you're outside
Yeah.
and you're running. I've been thinking about that the last couple of times I've gone out. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I
For
think
me,
it's interesting. Yeah.
the running thing was it's like I am going to like I'm going to go like 4 miles. Let's say that I think was my goal when I did this one experiment. I'm going to run until I stop enjoying it. And then I'm going to walk
Mhm.
until I want to run again. And then I'm going to run until I stop enjoying it. And that was my like, how do I enjoy running? And have this like set of experiments to enjoy running. And that was how I did this, like a similar thing.
Mm.
And I think there's 1,000 different experiments one can run. That's not the one I prescribe, but there's just 1,000 different experiments you can run to figure out how to enjoy the thing rather than you have to do this. If you don't do this, you're not going to be happy. Why didn't you do this? Blah, blah, all that crap.
Yeah.
Just not effective. And everybody knows it's not effective because it's like it's your 50th diet. It's your 70th time that you've told yourself you're going to plant the garden. It's your 100th time that you said you're going to get up on the roof and whatever. Just doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, because again, it's a great point to noodle into, is like finding just, even if it's something like I'm trying to learn something new, or I'm gonna, the roof's example, or hey, yeah, I've been doing this DIY project, I've been talking about, like finding enjoyment in just the learning of it. Like, oh, this is interesting. I'm gonna have a new skill after this, or I'm gonna expose something I didn't know before, and taking that approach versus, oh, I got to get that done today, and like beating yourself up for it. It's like it's changing your mindset on like how you approach any activity. And I think that what's interesting, what you're saying is, it's not just for that activity. That relates to everything else you do after that, because now you start thinking differently about other activities and other things that you do day in and day out, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's the whole way through the activity, which is interesting. Like, so for instance, I'm working with a new man who's like running our company, and we had this incredibly successful launch of one of our courses, and he was saying, "Oh, I noticed that I'm like just beating myself up for all the things that I could have done that I didn't do, even though like we went way exceeded the goal."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, how do we enjoy that, and how do we enjoy actually getting like this thing? Like, how do we celebrate like that we achieve this goal? What is that like?" And so inside of the company, he decided what he wanted to do. He's like, I don't want to go drink. I don't want to like, I want to actually just have gratitude for everybody who participated. So he got the 9 people who all got it together, and there was this like 30 minutes where everybody got to express gratitude for what had happened and felt really, really great. And it was like just this wonderful thing that like totally transformed. And now we want to work together and do another project even more
Mm.
than we did before. The best part about it was one of the people who's kind of new to the team writes this email and says, man, that brought up a lot of anger for me, that gratitude thing. Like I just got angry about that and
Yeah.
sad. And she goes, and I sat with it and I was like, it makes no sense. And then she said, I was just angry and sad over all the times that I could, that in work we could have celebrated, that we could have appreciated, and we never got to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was like so cool. And so yeah, it just is super effective. It's super effective to enjoy yourself.
Yeah. I guess maybe on a similar path to that, I'm going to kind of hopscotch to something else because you've been
Yeah.
meditating for like 25 years, right? Something like that, more than that, isn't that?
Yeah, I don't keep track, but yeah, probably to 20.
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
reason
yeah.
I bring it up.
Yeah, yeah, 29 years, something like
Oh,
that. Yeah.
wow. Okay. The reason I bring that
Yeah.
up is because I find that, at least for me, and I don't meditate consistently, maybe as I'd like to, but
Yeah.
when I do, I find that brings me more calmness, more gratitude, leads to having more peace of mind, I guess, and to that enjoyment. So I'm kind of curious, maybe and you can, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's something else, other folks where they can find something to latch onto to help them get to that state. Is it meditation? Are there other things that you would encourage or?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a meditation teacher, and it's not really a big part of anything that we do, but it is something that I enjoy, and I think that's again the main thing. So what I notice in meditation is that most people, when they approach meditation, it's just self management. It's like they're sitting there and they're like, "How do I get? I need to be more quiet. I need to be da 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 da. I need to da 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 da." Like it's this constant like self management, which is not fucking meditation. It's absolute torture.
Mhm.
And I know because I did it for a decade, right? So I know how much pain that is. Rather than like, oh, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to not manage myself, or I'm going to sit here and enjoy whatever comes up, including pain, suffering, whatever. Like, how do I just like welcome whatever is here into it, like and welcoming creates this deep enjoyment of meditation. So I would say often that's like the same thing I would say if you're approaching meditation. It's not so much about what you do. There's lots of great things. There's breath work and there's yoga and there's Pilates and there's meditation and there's prayer and there's journaling and there's so many activities that we can do that center us or ground, qigong, that ground us, that allow us to have a more settled nervous system. But if you do it with I got to get somewhere, if you do it with I'm trying to manage myself, it just doesn't work. So to me, it's more about the way that you approach it to make any of these things work than it is.
Mhm.
And part of it is if you're trying to change yourself, then it's less enjoyable. You're less likely to do it. If you're like, this is an experiment, I get to play, I get to enjoy, I get to discover myself, that's a far more replicable thing that you want to do over and over again.
Well, I guess in terms of that, just let's just take the broad brush of self-reflection, like with the folks that you're coaching and working with, because
Yeah.
obviously if they're exposing themselves, I find this is again when I know this from my own life, but again, a lot of folks that I talk with, like it seems like distraction. They would rather distract themselves than actually sit
Yes.
for 10 minutes in silence and think about how to solve
Yeah.
problems in their life. Do you find that's maybe the biggest hurdle for most folks to jump, or is there something else you'd share?
People are distracting because there's an emotion they don't want to feel, right? Like
Mhm.
what happens is something comes up. I don't want to feel that. Boom, I'm on my phone. Something comes up. I don't want to feel that. Boom, give me the alcohol. I don't want to, boom, I'm going to talk about gossip with my friends so I don't actually have to feel what's going on. So, and neurologically speaking, we know this. Like we know that the decision making part of our brain is the emotional part of our brain. So like if I took the emotional center of your brain out, then it's something like it'd take you 10 or 20 minutes to decide what color pen. It would take you 3-4 hours to decide where to have lunch.
Mm.
So we know that what we're basically doing is avoiding an emotional experience or running towards an emotional experience. And so distraction is really means that you haven't like learned how to fully welcome the emotional experiences and see like the joy and pleasure and the signal of all these emotional experiences.
Mm.
So to me, distraction is the symptom. The cause is like a lack of emotional fluidity, a lack of really allowing and connecting with all the emotional expressions that happen in you.
If someone's had that though for most of their life, how
Yeah.
do they I mean, besides again, maybe them exposing it or telling them, like, how do they recognize, all right, this is happening. I'm reaching for my phone. I need to
Yes.
pause and stop. Like, how do they do? I mean, I guess I'm just kind of curious. Like, how do they go to that next step? Because it seems so small, minute, but yet it is a massive leap.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing that I notice is that there's a lot of answers to that question. But the thing that I notice is that people really underestimate realization as a form of change. So what I notice people do is they have this moment of epiphany. They have this realization, and then they immediately jump to, what do I do to maintain it? Oh my God, I realize I have this moment of like, oh, sugar fucking sucks. I don't feel good 30 minutes later, and I'm using sugar because I don't want to feel these three emotions or this emotion. They have that epiphany. And then the very next thing that they do is they go, how do I quit eating sugar?
Yeah.
And that step slows down the process of like not eating sugar so much. If instead it's like, here's this thing, oh, I'm going to actually like feel this in my whole body. Oh my gosh, I'm going to actually feel what it would be like all the shit that I'm going to have to deal with to not eat sugar, like the chocolate in the bowl and the blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
I'm going to let this really, I'm just going to be grateful as hell for having seen it. I'm just going to be like grateful for it. Right. And then I'm going to like, if I eat sugar, I'm going to like really be aware of like just that awareness of what does it taste like? What's happening in that? Like that is going to make the change of sugar happen a lot quicker than, okay, what are the three things that I need to do to quit eating sugar? So that's one aspect. The second aspect is when people think about how I'm going to quit eating sugar, they think willpower,
Mm.
which doesn't fucking work. Like there's decision fatigue. It's a psychological phenomenon. We know about it. Like if you put candy in front of you, you're at some point you're going to eat the damn candy, right? So then how do you set up a system where the candy's not in front of you? How do you set up a system where you've replaced what the candy gives to you with something more healthy? How do you set up a system where you stop the kind of behavioral pattern of like every day at 2:00, this is what I do. I eat this candy. Like, and so when 2:00 hits, I'd naturally want candy. Like, how do you interrupt that? So, but instead what we do is we say, okay, I'm going to stop candy without actually having all the things in place that will help us. Like, because we can't do it. And once you realize willpower is not going to get me there, then you set up systems in your life that are going to help you, support you in that process. And then the other thing that happens is that if you tell yourself you can't do something, eventually you rebel against it. So like this is a kind of advanced hack, but it's a really cool hack, which is I can eat sugar anytime I want. Really makes sugar unappealing. I can't have sugar. I won't have sugar. I'm not going to have sugar. Eventually that shit cracks. So there's a way in which you constantly remind yourself you're a choice. You get to choose. That's another like thing that helps. And then the other thing that happens is in the way the mentality works is someone like they have that one piece of sugar and they go, fuck it. I fucked up. Fuck it. God damn it. I guess that sugar. And then they just are like right back on the wagon of like inhaling as much sugar as they can handle. Right. And so that's another part of it, which is like, oh, I had sugar. Can I be grateful for that? Can I be kind and gentle with myself around that? Or am I going to beat myself up and just go, I failed and fuck it, and then go right back into the thing? And so I think there's all sorts of little itty bitty movements that help us in the process. But the biggest one is like, how do you fully allow awareness to do its work?
Yeah. Well, I like that too, the rebellion side of just of like, yeah, because you have
Yeah.
to make that choice of if I have the sugar, it's okay. It's not gonna the one time's fine. You know what? I'm gonna make the
Yeah.
choice next time not to. And again, it's a calmness with yourself. It's a generosity to yourself. Um,
Yes.
I really like though the realization of change because yeah, you're so right. Going back to what we started with like the fitness analogy, the New Year's resolutions. Like if you said to yourself, hey, you know what? Every hour on the hour, I'm going to do 10 push-ups. I'm just going to do it throughout the
Yes.
day and I'm going to make it, well, it's easy. It's right here. It's, you don't have to have any body weight versus I'm going to go to the gym on the elliptical for 2 hours and I'm going to, well, once something gets in the way, all of a sudden you break that. So making it easy, being able to make it digestible. So I like you have to realize those steps forward. Like, I'm not going to be able to drive 20 minutes to the gym every day or, I forget my gym shoes all the time. Okay, let me make sure they're in my car the morning up. Like stuff like that to help you get in the way
Yeah.
of actually being successful.
Absolutely. And part of it also, a deeper level, is the identity, right? Like when people talk about, yeah, I don't like working out, they're defining themselves as not liking working out,
Mhm.
right? Or I'm impatient. Right? They define themselves with this impatience, which may or may not be true. Like sometimes we don't see ourselves clearly, sometimes we do. Um, but there is a way of like, how do you change the way that you define yourself? And this is actually the trickiest part. One thing is, as you change your habits, you start defining yourself differently, so that helps. But there's also a way to reverse engineer that, where you start, like, a gratitude practice is a great way to do it. I'll give you the example. So I have a problem with money. Someone defines themselves with, I have a problem with money and I don't have enough money. Right. And so all their life, they're having these thoughts that are like, I don't have enough money. I have to fight for money. Why, blah, blah, blah. Like they have this thing. And then they decide, I'm going to do a gratitude practice where I'm going to just be grateful for everything I fucking have. We are, and most people who are listening to this podcast have a tremendous amount of resources, but we're walking around thinking that we don't have anything. And having worked with billionaires, I can tell you it doesn't fucking change. There's a lot of billionaires that I know who are just also driving around right now in their car thinking, I don't have enough.
Yeah.
So it doesn't change. And so, okay, now I'm going to have gratitude practice. I'm going to specifically have this gratitude practice of all the things I do have. Oh, wow, I have this home. Oh, wow, I have, the ability to have this microphone and ability to do a podcast. And I have this garden and I have food on my table and whatever. And you have a real experience of gratitude, not like I'm just saying it, but you actually allow yourself to feel that gratitude. And you do that for 3 months. Your definition of yourself changes. You're like, oh, I'm a person with a lot of shit. And then you walk around the world acting like you're a person with a lot of shit. And then more shit comes to you. Like that's how it works. And so, like, if you can use there's many ways, but you could use a gratitude, like, oh, I'm really grateful I went to the gym today. I'm really grateful that I want to fucking work out. I'm really grateful that I'm concerned about my exercise. I'm really grateful that I found a way to work out with a friend because that's more enjoyable. I'm really grateful that, like, I just did 10 sit-ups. Like all of that, like that redefines who you are. Gratitude is an incredible tool to redefine the way you view yourself.
Well,
And there's others,
and
but
that,
that's another tool that you use. Yeah.
well, I like that. Oh, I want to, I want to hear about that if you have it. The abundance mentality is so key because again, it's a trickle down effect to even the other stuff we were talking. How do you get away from a victim mentality? Well, think in terms of abundance. Think of you have a good life. You have so many opportunities that come to you every day. It's are you always looking at because we've all been around those folks and we've been those folks ourselves, but those folks where it's always negative, it's always
Yeah.
complaining, it's always and it's like, ooh, God, that's not how I want to live. And if you kind of have your ears and eyes perked open, we realize we do that to ourselves, and we do that more often than we probably want. So I think that
Yeah.
the awareness that we're talking about, I think is so important. And then putting that into gratitude practice.
Yeah. Like here's an example of it. Like if you're look around wherever you are right now, everything that you see somebody made money on. Everything that you see. Like if you're watching this video, like the art on my walls, the paint on my walls, the person who built the windows, the people who shipped the windows. There's not only is there somebody made money on everything you see, tens of people, maybe hundreds of people made money on everything you see. And if you look at the world that way, if you see the world as like an look at all these opportunities, what do you think the likelihood of you finding a way to make money is? Then if you're looking at the world and be like, making money is so hard, there's not a lot of ways to do it. I'm really like, there's only like 3 options and I don't like any of them. To actually that flip of a switch is really effective if you just see the way things are. If you just see yourself the way you are, then all of a sudden this optionality opens up.
Yeah. Well, I think if I'm remembering, we could fact check the internet on this, but I think so. When I was doing some research, you have these like rapid fire things you do with the courses and workshops, right? And I think the one you had, the lady you were talking to, I think it was something around money where she was like, I feel selfish making money. And you're like, so if you had $100 million and other people had 100 million, you would feel selfish. And it was kind of like an epiphany right there. She was like, oh, I guess that's not true. I don't know if you recall that, but it's kind of interesting as like, again, turning our perspective. We have such a mentality, and a lot of it probably from childhood. It's how do we actually shape that a little bit differently going forward.
Yeah. Those rapid fires are really fun to do in courses. It's like, you have these 10 minutes with people and they have these huge like epiphanies. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What God, there's so many things I want to get to. I might have to have you on for a part 2 if you're cool with that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Tell me a little bit about so the workshops and courses. Tell me a little about that, what y'all are doing with it, what you're excited about maybe going forward.
Yeah, there's a I'm sure we can put it in the show notes, the link that escapes me. I think it's view.life something, but we have these like little teasers for people to come. I think every once in a while, like once every 6 months or something, I'll do like a rapid fire coaching to the public. And we have these little mini workshops so that people can decide if it's right for them. And then we have the introductory course is something called the Connection course, which is all about learning to communicate better, learning to be in connection with yourself and with others, which is like kind of the basis of enjoyment. And then also how to have productive conflict, because we notice that a lot of people, it's like that potential conflict stops them from doing a lot of stuff that they really want to do in their life. And then we have a decisions course, a great decisions course that we do once a year. And we have masterclass, and those 2 are very intense courses and have it's just amazing the transformation that people go through in those courses. And both of them have, again, like an intellectual, an emotional, and a nervous system component so that we can really help people see themselves clearly more quickly.
Are those, that's really based, or those like or they have like a cohort based, or how are those structured?
Oh yeah, man. Those that like they are unlike, I think, almost any course that you've had. So there's, in many of them, there's one-on-one work where you have a partner, and then there's a small group depending on the course. And in those small groups, this is not like intellectual learning. There's podcasts, so you can like, our podcast has learning. And so we have some of those podcast segments that you take in the course to learn like intellectually, but the rest of it is you're running experiments with each other. You're having experience, you're creating experiences with one another so you can learn something. Like we have an experience of like, what is it to live in a should compared to what is it to live in a want? Or what is it to handle a trigger this way? What is it to handle a trigger a different way? So there's all sorts of things that you literally get a felt visceral experience working with others. And so there's this great relational part. And then there's a time to process and an online thing. And there's facilitators and coaches in many of the courses. So for us, it's like we really want to give people all the support, and we want it to be incredibly entertaining and enjoyable to do so people finish. And because of that, I think we have like, on average, I think we have like a 97% completion rate, something to that effect, maybe 95 if you go through all the courses.
Yeah.
So we have this crazy completion rate because it's very engaging.
Well, I think a lot of like the self-paced courses, digital courses, it's like 43% because people just stop. And I think if you have the human connection there, it kind of has that accountability factor to it to keep you going.
I think it's a lot less. I think it's something like
It
10%.
might be. I
I
don't
think.
maybe I'm giving
Yeah,
too
it's
much credit.
crazy. Little. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we have a high one even for cohort based.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a very unique experience. And there's a lot of people in our groups who literally, like with the master class, I know groups, some of the small groups inside of the big group, let's say we have about 80 or 100 people in a master class, and then there's these groups of 6. I know some of them who've like stayed friends for 4 years. Like
Wow.
they go deep.
Oh, wow.
It's
That's
really
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah. All right, Joe. So last kind of thought here as we leave, folks listening in, what's something, if some folks are trying to get started today, what's the first
Yeah.
step? Anything tactical, actionable you would share with them? Maybe a question to ask themselves. You can kind of take it however you want. Anything you would
Yeah.
share to help them today just to kind of move off zero?
To just go from 0 to 1.
Just a 0 1, something they should think about, act on, something they should maybe do to be different than they were today.
So I want to give this thing, but I wouldn't give this normally, but in the context here,
Okay.
I want to give it. And the reason I say that is because probably this question has been answered by a ton of the people in your guests, and there's a whole bunch of answers about like motivation and let's do it and just see yourself and everything like that. And so if somebody's actually has an interest in this question and has listened to all of that, none of that shit has worked. So I'm giving a piece of advice to the people who none of that other stuff has worked. Okay. And so here's the piece of advice. Tell yourself 20 times a day, you're not allowed to do the thing. So let's say it's do a garden. You're not allowed to do it. Joe, you're not allowed to do that garden. Joe, you're not allowed to do that garden. No matter what you do, you're not allowed to do that garden. 20 times a day. And eventually you will fucking rebel and you will do the damn garden.
Okay. I like it. Hey,
because everybody else is giving you some way to motivate yourself. If it hasn't worked, then that means you rebel against the own voice in your head. So make the voice in your head say the thing that, if you rebel against it, will be the action that you want to take.
I love it. Awesome. All right. That's the advice. That's the actionable item today, Joe. Man, thanks so much. This was a lot of fun. I'll put everything in the show notes. I appreciate it. Where do you spend a lot of time online? Anywhere folks can say hello to you? And I don't know.
Oh yeah, Twitter is where I engage generally. Okay. I love great questions. And if you listen to our podcast, artofaccomplishment.com, there's places where you can put questions and I'll answer those questions. Every once in a while, we'll do a podcast where we answer questions. So those are the 2 places.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much for being on, man. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. All right.
Thanks. I appreciate it.